Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those on the European continent. We hope that you've had a good week so far and a safe summer as we head into the second half of this rather difficult year. Yet we have our fingers crossed for more positive developments and rooting to end the year on a good high. Welcome back to the fourth sequence of the ATF Blocked-in Series 2020. This 45-minute session will give us an update on the rather distinctive market that Taiwan has evolved into. We are privileged to have with us veteran buyers from significant platforms in Taiwan. With us today, we have Agnes Mao, manager of LTV, Billy Yang, managing director of Chong-I International Corporation, and Jay Lin, founder of Portico Media. We're also really excited to have Victoria de Kerdrel, APAC consultant of K7 Media, who joins us as session moderator. She will begin the session with a quick overview of the market, sharing some exclusive statistics. Let's welcome Victoria as we begin this session.
Thank you very much, Lunita, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody's safe and well. It's a pleasure to moderate this session today, and I hope we can provide some valuable insights on the media and entertainment industry, looking at the market of Taiwan. Buyers speak. What are they looking for? The goal of today's session is to take a closer look at the Taiwanese market, peeking into the mindset of content buyers and commissioners, and revealing the current state of content alignment there. Let's take a look at a brief overview before we start the discussion. So looking at the first slide, the Taiwanese market, with a population of 23.8 million, has a multitude of linear channels and a total of 24 OTT channels. Interestingly, 18 are homegrown, which is actually the highest number in Asia, closely followed by Japan, which has 15. On the next slide, if we look at acquisitions during primetime TV from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. midnight, we notice that unscripted factual programming is predominantly locally sourced, whereas kids and scripted are usually imported, foreign acquisitions. We should note that the Taiwanese market has not acquired formats in the past 2 years. So now if we take a closer look on the next slide into the breakdown of drama and movie acquisitions, it's evident that this is dominated by Chinese and Korean, with Chinese at 45% and Korean at 40%. But if we are looking on the next slide, please, we can see the type of factual programming that works. So this is predominantly for the free-to-air broadcasters, the 5 free-to-air broadcasters, terrestrial broadcasters in the Taiwanese market. They tend to favor factual, unscripted when acquiring internationally. So typically this will be the blue chip wildlife documentaries, which are generally acquired from Japan, Europe, or the US. And then beyond these acquisitions, if we move to the next slide, beyond the traditional free-to-air channels, if we look at acquisitions by other cable, IPTV, OTT, the OTT players, we note a significant appetite for scripted acquisitions. And at the moment, we note a definite preference for escapist programming, typically sci-fi, supernatural, suspense, and horror titles. Moving on to the next slide, it's interesting to note that this year we see an increase in the production of originals and the desire to co-produce internationally with the miniseries Taiwan Express, which was co-produced between PTS and NHK, Also, following the success of The Teenage Psychic and The World Between Us, the HBO Asia original Workers launched earlier this year. Ghost Bride, which is actually Netflix's first Mandarin commission original, was co-produced between Taiwan and Malaysia with Revolution Media in Malaysia. And then GagaOOLala is launching the first series about LGBT stories under quarantine. Unlocked will launch today, and this is directed by Adolfo Alix Jr. Finally, on the last slide, it's interesting to note that co-production in the Taiwanese market is supported by Taika, the Taiwan creative content agency founded last year. Taika aims to drive innovation in the creation of cultural content. A national development fund of approximately $600 million was announced last year, and a large part of this will be used by Taika to invest in television and film. With this funding, and according to our first-hand information, Taika is organizing the first edition of the Creative Content Taipei Festival later this year. And this is primarily to boost co-development and facilitate co-production with international partners. So now, with no further delay, I'd like to start the discussion. And I'm going to kick off with Agnes. I would like to invite our panelists to return. So Agnes, would you help us understand in general, for those who are looking to find opportunities in the Taiwanese market, and they're looking for to distribute their content, what advice would you give on entering the market in order to sell successfully?
Great content at a free price is always the key. Okay, this is a cliche and applies everywhere. But before I go into details, please let me give a brief introduction of my company, LTV. And we are a content provider, and most of our content are from acquisition. We run 8 channels in the biggest IPTV platform called MOD, and also work with some OTT platforms in Taiwan. So I will focus on these markets today. And among the 8 channels we own, there are 3 movies, 3 drama, and 1 animation, 1 knowledge channel. The 3 channels are classified into Western, Asian, and Classic. The drama channels are divided into 3 based on the types and the age of the target audience. So one is the family story and targeted for the household wives or the elder female audience. And one is the idol drama, which is like romance, comedy, fantasy, and so on. For entering the market successfully, my suggestion is to have a better understanding of your target buyers or the target platforms. The acquisition from IPTV will be more for drama, movie, animation, and some of the unscripted content like sporting events, travelogue, food, wildlife documentary. Also among the imported drama, approximately 80% are from Korea and mainland China. And rest of the 20 will be Western, Japanese, and Thai content. But some of the OTT platforms are trying to make a little differentiation from the competitors in order to keep the online audience engaged. There's still opportunity for the rest of the 20 content seller to be successful as long as you find the right OTT platform. So for those who distribute content like movie and drama, congratulations, you're in the halfway to success, because these content work for both IPTV and OTT platforms. But for those who are having other types of content, it will be more likely for you to make a deal with free TV, cable TV, and IPTV. Also, the license fee of each type of content for every single platform can vary over a wide range due to the business model. So knowing your target buyers first may save you a lot of time when you enter into this market. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Agnes. So let's hear from Jay. Jay, there are attendees today listening in from more than 41. They're interested in the market of Taiwan. In your role as CEO of Portico Media, could you give us a general overview of the type of foreign programming that works well in the market and that you would consider for your channels? And could you also give us some examples of the programming that resonates with the Taiwanese audience? For example, would Thai or Spanish or French programming work for you?
Okay. Thanks, Victoria, and thanks to the listeners that are tuning in from the 41 different I know there's a lot of different time zones, so if you're staying up late to listen to this, I thank you for joining this session. So since there are 41 plus attendees from different, 41 attendees from 41 different, I can discuss this by breaking down region by region, starting with Asia first. And I think your PowerPoint correctly pointed that there is a huge sort of like skew towards Japanese, Korean and Mandarin language content, whether that's locally produced or from China. Japan is actually another substantial part of that. But whereas Japan, maybe the acquisition is not so much on the dramas that are such heavy concentration from Korea and China, but rather an assortment of other genre content, for example, animation, as well as maybe like nature stuff, like NHK content. And if we are looking at Southeast Asia, there is currently not that much content that seeps into Taiwan to the various channels or platforms, but they're starting to have some blossoming. For example, recently, one of the operators in Taiwan, Line TV, is having kind of like a Thai branded sort of like section to explore the possibility of this particular sort of genre content from Thailand could blossom. I think there might sometimes be content that comes in from Philippines or from Vietnam, but those are quite few in between. But I think maybe with certain sort of collaborations or co-productions that are happening over these years, maybe that type of content will come in through other ways. For example, last year there was a co-production between a terrestrial channel in Taiwan and MediaCorp in Singapore, and it's a Mandarin language TV series. So if we move on then to, let's say, Europe, recently there was another OTT platform here by the name of My Video that started a sort of like a branded block with BBC. And so I think for content owners that have a substantial chunk of content, maybe it's an opportunity to use that leverage to create kind of like a branded block situation with some of the OTT operators here. But aside from what I had just mentioned in Europe with BBC, thus far, I don't know of any other sort of European media companies that have created this branded block per se. But Taiwan is quite open to content from other parts of the world. And relatively, the censorship here is pretty relaxed, meaning that there is a much greater latitude for, let's say, science fiction, horror, LGBT, or maybe some other social or cultural sort of like issues that could be more taboo in other, sort of, let's say, Muslim or conservative countries. And that's properly reflected in our sort of like theatrical space. So you see a huge proportion, you see a huge number of French films or German films or European films that actually get theatrically released here in Taiwan, whereas these films might not make it into the cinemas in other parts of Asia. And more so, I'm seeing a lot of these movies because right now I think the cinema space, especially in 2020, is even more challenged because of COVID-19, that a lot of these movies are moving towards the sort of movie SVOD or OTT services that tend to have like a strong movie focus. Like a lot of the telcos, whether it's MOD or MyVideo or Friday, operated by the three main telcos in Taiwan, they all have a pretty strong subscription base of movie watchers who are subscribing to their SVOD service because of the movies. And so that's something that the sort of European sellers might consider. Also the same for the US. Of course, there are the Hollywood blockbusters, but of course there are so many other movies that are considered more sort of genre content or lower budget or independent. I think more and more, perhaps maybe 3-4 years ago, or even earlier, they might not have found kind of like the right place to sit in Taiwan. But just as Victoria mentioned in the PowerPoint, there are 24 OTT services and over 200 channels in Taiwan. So there is an opportunity to find space for those type of content in Taiwan. The revenue, because this might not be substantial, and there might be a lot of small streams coming from different places. But I think that is just a reality of a sort of like a fracture market where you have so many different operators, so many different channels operating. Two other things I kind of want to mention is that perhaps, so last week was the launch of 5G with two of the major telcos here. So it's Chong-I Telecom, which is partially state-owned, and Taiwan Mobile. And with the advent of 5G, I think, especially for the telcos who are quite dominant here, they're looking for 4K content or content that could really allow them to flex their 5G muscles. And we definitely have experience successfully selling this type of content to the operators as well. The other thing is, so we operate a LGBT streaming service called GagaOOLala. I think Victoria earlier mentioned the series called Unlock that we're launching. And I think Taiwan is quite open to LGBT sort of content being distributed here to definitely the LGBT community, but actually there's a substantial community or audience base of women who consume sort of gay soap operas per se, or LGBT content. And since Taiwan is to have passed same-sex marriage, there's generally a more leniency to looking at content that has LGBT characters or storylines. And especially for kind of like European or Western sort of producers or sellers, where there is more of these kind of characters in the overall story arc, those are opportunities for selling to Taiwan.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jay. We'll come back to you shortly. I'm just going to see if we can connect with Billy. Billy, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
You know you're having some trouble with your video. I wanted to quickly ask you your advice for content distributors. How can they enter the Taiwanese market successfully?
Okay, I think Taiwan market itself is not very huge. So the platform mostly has their unique contact window to acquire the program suitable for each media platform. So some platform is concentrate on a certain kind of the content, and some others for other contents. So we have some specialized channel, such as the Japanese channel for 100% Japanese content, and so all the animation channel is for 24 hours for kids. So each channel they get used to have their content supply from certain well-known, certain familiar partner. marketplace. So I think the market way of the Taiwan needs to for the content provider, they need to approach or visiting each media each platform in order to introduce the content of their own to see whether the content is match their audience. This is as my understanding, once they are get used to to acquire from some supplier, they will concentrate on doing business with that Windows. As for example, we have a public channel, the PTS. PTS, they have their own production for the documentary. As for the outsourcing documentary, PTS almost concentrate on the BBC content. So this is the and their audience also get used to watch the BBC content through the PTS channel. So this is a kind of custom practice. The people get used to to see what they are looking for.
Okay.
And for the documentary, I think we have a very few local production. Most of the documentary are some kind of joint production. And we also have some channel. They broadcasted the program concentrate on the Mandarin version. So and also some channel is concentrate on some specified language. For example, one of the PTS channel is called Hakka TV. Hakka is a kind of Chinese tribe who speak Hakka language only. So that channel is funded by the government. So it's one of the public channel, non-commercial. And but the mission of that channel is for the Hakka culture or the Hakka language, maintenance or the extension. So all of the program aired. All of the program before broadcasting in state channel must be dubbed into the Hakka language. That is a kind of specialized program.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you just to stay on the line because we actually have another question about localization. I'm just going to go back to Agnes because I think this is important. How crucial do you think the localization of content is? Could you tell us a little bit about the process?
I think it's quite important in Taiwan, especially for the content targeted for elder audience or kids. Take the Korean drama as an example. For the family story ones, the household wife tend to watch the program and do the housework at the same time. So dubbing would be the must. And
the talking about the.
Sorry, I'm going to come back to you in a second. We'll just let Agnes finish and then I'll come back to you, if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, so the rating of these type of drama did reflect this preference. And in other hand, as K-pop influence around the world, the younger viewers are quite used to Korean and they will ask us for the original version instead of the dubbing one. So, yeah.
Okay. And Billy, would you agree with Agnes on localization?
Yeah, I agree. So, shall I start?
Yes, please. If you have anything to add on the importance of dubbing. for your programs?
Okay, talking about the localization, I think we have, the Mandarin as, national languages here, and also population around the 70% of the population in Taiwan are also speaking. We call it the Taiwanese. It's actually the Hokkien language. So Taiwan used to colonize by the Japan during before the Second World War. So we are get used to watch the Japanese content, and for the Japanese program, I think the localization is not very much necessary. It's not essential anyway. You can do localization if you feel like to do, and otherwise the original Japanese version will be fine to for the audience. And also we have Taiwan. We have Aboriginal tribe, around more than 10 tribes in Taiwan, and we have we call it the indigenous channel. Taiwan Indigenous Channel, that's for the Aboriginal people, and the channel broadcasted with the Aboriginal languages. That's something the channel operator needs to need to make the localization by themselves. And for the tribe of the Aboriginal tribe, more than 10 tribes means more than 10 different tribe languages. So so they also share the timing for each different language tribe to broadcast it. This is the way in Taiwan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Billy. Please stay on the line. I'm just going to go to Jay now. Jay, if we're looking at content acquisition pricing, could you tell me if you think that this has changed significantly with the entrance of international players such as Netflix, Facebook, YouTube, and how are the local players coping in this situation?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think we can say that Taiwan is in many ways a hyper-competitive market. Again, I refer back to the PowerPoint you have mentioned before with over 200 channels, local and foreign, of course, and 24 OTTs, at least that I know of. And 18 of those being sort of local. So from that, it might seem like there is kind of like a significant dominance of local OTTs in terms of the market share. But in reality, the top 5 OTTs take up a significant portion of the overall streaming. And actually all 5 of those are foreign, namely Netflix, which is American, Line TV, which is Korean Japanese, iQIYI, which is from China. And then you have Facebook and YouTube, which have both AVOD and SVOD, sort of, or like TVOD services, with YouTube Premium. And what is left for these 18 other OTTs to sort of like live off of is not that much. And so this is definitely going to be reflected in the pricing, in a sense that if an operator is interested in perhaps testing a certain sort of genre of content or new content, they're more likely going to use their membership base or sort of like their presence in Taiwan as a way to bargain for a lower price. And sometimes that arrangement would result in profit sharing, which is like risk sharing. Because for a lot of new content, I think there needs to be some experimentation to see whether that takes off or not. Of course, if a seller has like what is it, quote unquote killer content, then for sure the Taiwanese buyers are going to be very interested in that. But sometimes the sort of foreign streamers or the regional channels have a much deeper pockets because they are able to amortize the costs of acquisition over multiple markets. So in a sense, it's creating a little bit of a unfair sort of competitive advantage. And in that sense, the government, sort of our version of the FCC in the US, the NCC here, they are in talks about promulgating a new sort of OTT provisional law that will go about, I mean, it hasn't been finalized yet, so I can't say, and I don't know the full details, but in some ways it will be maybe the first OTT provisional law in the world, used to maybe to create some type of sort of percentage of local content for foreign streamers, and to kind of like make sure that foreign OTTs in Taiwan also are fully registered or playing with the rules that the local sort of OTTs have to abide by. This is going to be sort of announced, I think, in the near future, and it could be a significant game changer in sort of like the sort of layout, the media layout and the landscape for the streaming service in Taiwan. So this is something that whether you're a buyer or whether you're a producer or someone who's in the media should be looking closely into, because it's going to affect how you sell, who you sell, and how much you sell into the market in the future. And then you mentioned something about Facebook and YouTube. I think those are definitely also very strong quote unquote competitors to sort of like the paid, let's say the SVOD streamers here, because I think the YouTube and Facebook, even like IGTV or even TikTok, they are increasingly more and more either creating their original or aggregating or somehow just bringing forward through their algorithms content that people really want to watch. And so it's very easy. And Taiwan is, I think, one of the world's leading sort of like in terms of percentage of use for Facebook and YouTube. So that in a sense gets people to be a little bit disincentivized to actually pay for a SVOD service, an additional SVOD service. They might have one that they generally go to. Maybe it's iQIYI or maybe it's Netflix, but because of the availability, is so much a plethora of content that's available for free on some of these other sort of YouTube, Facebook, Instagram platforms that it's becoming maybe even more of a challenge for people to pay for additional sort of more niche or other OTTs on top of the ones that they generally go to already. And this is definitely going to impact again, kind of like the overall layout for the sort of media streaming market here, because I think 24 OTT industries you mentioned in Japan, there's only 15, right? And that market is, I think, maybe 4 or 5 times bigger than in Taiwan. So I think in the future, there has to be some sort of consolidation and some sort of like rearrangement to make it kind of a sustainable ecosystem here in Taiwan.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jay. Before we continue, I'd just like to mention for the people listening in, there's going to be a quick polling segment so happening about now. So please do take part in that, and we'll just continue with the conversation. So I'm just going to go into some more specifics with Agnes, if I may. Agnes, could I ask you, what type of content are you looking to buy specifically at the moment? And is there anything that you are having difficulty sourcing? Anything that you think there's just not enough of, and you would like people listening in to take the opportunity to pitch to you?
We are looking for movies, drama, animation, and wildlife documentary. And the title I think is comparatively hard to find in the market right now is the animation targeted for 9 to 12-year-old boys. Yeah, it's kind of hard, like very hard to find in the market right now.
Okay, great. And just quickly following on from this, Jay, could you give advice to the people listening in and tell us what you feel doesn't work in the Taiwanese market?
Doesn't work? Well, I think if the content is fairly foreign or fairly new for the Taiwan market to sell at once, like many episodes, like massive episodes, like maybe some telenovelas or some ongoing series, might be quite difficult just because it might take up a lot of bandwidth, or it might take up a lot of time slot on sort of linear channels. And that will make it a bit more challenging for the buyers to decide on acquiring that. I think also if the content is fairly new to the market, I think having some commitment to the buyer in terms of using the seller's sort of resources to help promote or to help sort of bring awareness, whether it's getting the cast to record something or providing additional sort of like behind the scene footage or promising sort of like marketing budget to sort of co-promote, could be a good way to get a local buyer to buy in to something that he or she might not have been so aware before. And of course, in general, which goes back to sort of my point too, is if a content generally has a more recognizable name, I think this is universal, right? Whether it's the director or whether it's the cast or perhaps some sort of more direct local relevance to the culture, to society, or to sort of like the happening here in Taiwan, and that linkage can be made, then it's going to be an easier sell for a local buyer here to acquire.
Okay, thank you very much, Jay. Back to Billy. Billy, can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
Billy, would you agree with Jay? Do you have any specific advice on people who have no experience selling into the Taiwanese market? Could you give some specific advice to them on how to help distribute their content?
I think try to show out oneself to to Taiwan platform is very important. So we have Taiwan pavilion in many major film market, content market. So to visiting our pavilion or to participate Taipei International TV and film exhibition is also very important to connect it with the Taiwan media centrate. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah. So it's still the human connection that we miss, but maybe to participate in online events at the moment, because that's the option that we have. Thank you, Billy. Just quickly before we move on, Agnes, could you give me some examples? Could you tell me what works and what doesn't work for you?
The one that works, I think, for a majority of the platform, drama and movie animation, that would be the one that works. For the factual content that is related to political issue or celebrity news, like of course beside K-pop idol, I think these definitely will not work in Taiwan.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That was really very useful, everybody. I'd like to take some questions from the people listening in. We've got quite a few, so we'll try and address as many as possible. Billy, if you can hear us on the line, we'll start with you. We have a question from Germany, and the question is, do you acquire non-English European drama? We also have the same question from Singapore, looking at non-English Asian content. So could you tell us your thoughts on that?
As I mentioned previously, the Taiwan people just concentrate on several, content from some. As for the German drama, frankly speaking, I didn't see any of German content broadcasted in any of the Taiwan platform at the moment. But as I understand, some German documentary were acquired and broadcast here. and of course they put the Japanese. I'm sorry, they put the Chinese subtitle while broadcasting. So German drama, just like other European drama from other European, I didn't see any channel, a local channel. I mean, they are broadcasting that kind of program. I think because of the for the audience oriented concern, the channel, mostly the commercial channel, they feel safe to broadcast something that maintain their good commercial sales. That's their concern. So for German content, I think I may suggest to visit the platform, Taiwan platform people to introduce your program. That's most important at this moment. Yes.
Thank you. Non-English Asian content?
No English should be okay, but as long as the channel they accept it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter it's English or German languages. But anyway, any foreign language will have to be with Chinese subtitle before broadcasting.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Billy. Jay, we have a question for you from India. Do you buy factual lifestyle, so food, travel content?
So we're actually a TV channel aggregator and distributor here in Taiwan. So we do have a few sort of lifestyle channels that we provide to the various sort of digital cable and IPTV operators here. And those have, the content that you mentioned, lifestyle, cooking, but we per se don't really acquire any. And I don't see a lot of this non-scripted programming on sitting on a lot of OTTs, unless it is tied with a big talent, whether that talent is a big actor, actress, or a celebrity chef. Then that provides kind of like an entertainment value alongside kind of like the cooking sort of tips or lifestyle tips. And I think partly the reason why perhaps this type of genre content is not so popular on the non-scripted stuff is because there's so much of similar content that's available in more tidbit sizes on YouTube and Facebook that is fulfilling a lot of people's need for this type of genre already.
Okay, great. Agnes, we have a question from Japan. Just very quickly, are you planning any special time blocks for the Tokyo Olympics?
Alta TV has obtained the exclusive right for Tokyo Olympics, and it will be broadcast live by Alta Sports, so we don't have the plan for that.
Okay, so Alta Sports, the other OTT.
Yeah.
Okay. Billy, we have a question from Russia this time. Which foreign content are you willing to buy? So I think we've kind of answered this question. Would you consider buying scripted Russian content? So I understand that it's not necessarily what is airing at the moment, but would you still suggest Russian distributors to approach channels in the Taiwanese market?
From Russia, I think, from my point of view, I may concern if there is, documentary or the animation TV series, we may able to consider. As for the movie or the drama, I think the situation is similar to the German program.
Right.
So it take time to introduce the program into the market.
Okay. Jay, could you tell us, in your opinion, what kind of Japanese content is popular in the Taiwan?
Oh, okay. In Taiwan, I think Japanese animation is most popular. So those Japanese merchandising product of the animation character are also dominate very big market. So we have Totoro, very popular here, and we have Chibi Maruko and Ikkyu-san. So a lot of One Piece, those kind of Japanese animation. As I mentioned, Taiwan, the culture of the Japanese culture is most welcome in Taiwan next to our own culture.
Okay, thank you, Billy. I'm just going to ask Jay. Jay, would you agree with Billy on that?
Yeah, I mean, Taiwan was a former colony of Japan, and there's a lot of cultural and all types of interactions between the government, between institutions, and between the people of these two. It sets a very friendly foundation for content to be easily welcomed here. And I think there's a very sort of solid fan base of comic books and also anime that is anchored by these Comic-Con sort of like big events that happen throughout the year that drive droves of young anime fans and sort of Japanese sort of Japanophiles to these events. So it's getting bigger and bigger. So definitely anime is very strong here. I think dramas as well. And I think another genre that is picking up here quite a bit is BL, which is, it means boys love. And it's basically the gay, as I mentioned before, the gay soap opera that started off in Japan and moved to Thailand and now in Taiwan and the Philippines. So this type of content is very welcome by significant, sort of not majority, but significant portions of the population.
Okay, great. Agnes, could I ask you a question from Canada now? Do Taiwanese audiences have the same appetite for game show content as Vietnam?
Local Taiwanese game shows are quite popular in Taiwan, but we did acquire a local one last year, and it did a great job. But we haven't tried the foreign one yet, and the hesitation is that this type of content is associated with cultural differences. So there will be a lot of localization needs to be done. But I think selling format may be a solution for those who want to enter this market.
And is this something that you would like to explore in your...
Yeah, maybe in the future, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Jay, I have a question for you from Canada. How does your market react to comedy content in general?
So we distribute Comedy Central here in Taiwan, and comedy is definitely one of my favorite genres. But I think most people know that comedy is also very contextualized, and it's also very localized. So maybe something funny in Canada might not translate at all in Taiwan. And so there's the challenge of the localization and subtitling, and also just like the cultural differences. I think it makes it quite difficult for comedy content to do well here. And Taiwan also doesn't have a huge familiarity with the idea of sitcoms. Of course, there are the successful ones like Friends from a long time ago, but sitcom is not generally a sort of type of content that people consume here. And a lot of comedy content seems to be packaged like a sitcom. And so I think there's a little bit of a disconnect in terms of how Taiwanese audiences watch humor, because a lot of comedy content is embedded into the variety shows or the game shows. And also a lot of comedy sort of genre has shifted onto the pure sort of like Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, with the rise of a lot of YouTubers or Instagrammers making funny sketches and funny videos. I think a lot of the comedy content has veered over there to those type of platforms for consumption.
Okay, thank you. Agnes, this is quite a specific question. Could you give an example of a recent successful acquisition from a foreign distributor and tell us why you think this was successful for you and why it resonated with your audience?
Oh yeah, we have a wildlife documentary series called Kalahari Meerkats. This is quite a successful one in our knowledge channel, and I think the reason is that it is not simply simply showing the lives or behavior of the meerkats, as these creatures are known for living in like tight-knit family groups. The producer made a full use of that and created a story like a meerkat version of Romeo and Juliet based on the conflict between two meerkat families. So it really brings a breath of fresh air after all the stereotype and informative documentaries. So I think there is a great possibility for the factual content with a strong storyline to meet with good result in Taiwan.
Fantastic. Okay, I think we have time just to go back to Billy, if you can hear us. Could you,
Yeah.
This is a somewhat strategic question from Hong Kong. Are cable and terrestrial linear operators in a competing or transforming or cooperation mode in relation with OTT?
I have less idea with the OTT, so maybe can I just skip this question?
Or I could put it to Jay. Would you like to take a stab at this question?
I think there's definitely a certain level of competition between linear and OTT, because there's only sort of like a certain numbers of minutes and hours that we have to consume. And so it is sometimes kind of like a zero-sum game. And cord cutting is generally happening everywhere, including here in Taiwan. But what some of the sort of linear operators or channels have been doing is providing their channels onto some of these OTT services, so that people can have a choice between watching the video on demand as well as the digital linear channels. And some of the linear channels have taken the plunge to also create their own OTT services, kind of like SCT, which is one of the cable channels here. They have a service called Vito that bundles their programming as well as their channels. And some of them are just originals that they put just on the Vito OTT. So there's a combination of things where it's competitive as well as collaborative.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we have many more questions, but I'm afraid that's all the time we have left for this very necessary session. Thank you, Agnes. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Billy, despite your issues connecting. Thank you very much for listening in. And thank you for your very honest answers. Thank you, ATF, and especially Lunita, for organizing this session. And I hope people listening in will have, this has showed you the opportunities and the challenges to help you expand your footprint into the Taiwanese market. Please don't forget to log on again on the 15th and 16th as ATF takes on Hong Kong, China, in its last segment of this incredibly insightful series. See you very soon.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lulu, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.